Hey everyone, before the music kicks on and I do my introduction, I wanted to make you aware of an event coming up. We're going to be having our first virtual roundtable October 24th, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. This is going to be a time where Awana directors, leaders, and volunteers are all invited across the state of Tennessee to come on for a time of prayer, a time of encouragement, and a time for sharing ideas. You're not going to want to miss it. So go to www.awanatn.com/events. Okay, that's all I've got. Let's get to the intro music. Hey everyone, this is Hunter Williams with the Awana Tennessee Network. I serve as the Awana missionary for Central and Southeast Tennessee. And today on the show, we've got Abel Lopez joining us. Abel serves as the director for the Awana US Latino Ministries. And this was such an exciting conversation. Because during this conversation, Abel shares about his role in the U.S. Latino ministries. He shares what they do, how they train. And I love the ending of our conversation because we get on this kick about discipleship that I left encouraged, I left energized, and I pray it will do the same for you. So let's go ahead and kick our conversation over with Abel Lopez. I've been dying to have you come on to share about Awana US Latino because it's something Awana is doing that I'm very excited about, having this focus on helping our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. And for those who may not know anything about Awana US Latino, or maybe just a little bit, I'd love for you to just kind of briefly share what is our US Latino ministry, when did it start, and what's your role in it?
Well, the excitement is mutual, my friend.
Yeah.
We're so excited to be doing this. Uh, the Awana US ministry started back in April of 2019. And prior to that, the leadership team of Awana, led by Matt Markins, our president, really had a burden to start something in the Latino church. And there's some reasons for that, obviously. One, we weren't very engaging in the past with Latino churches.
Mm-hmm.
Two, the biggest growth that's coming in the next 30 years is coming from the Latino culture to the US. It represents 60% of that growth, and that's growth coming from the second, third, and fourth generation Latinos. So therefore, this is a huge need for the US churches right now. So it was really birthed out of that need and that burden to say, what else can we do to reach the every, right? It's important to reach the every person, every child, every student needs to be discipled. And the fact that really made it so exciting for me is that students that finish the Awana discipleship program, 92.7% will never abandon their faith. I think the average is like 36%, something like that, some crazy number that's really low.
Yeah.
And we have like a 92.7%, which is, it's just off the chain. And it's such a need for right now and in this time. I've served the Latino church since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And, I grew up in it. I've been at every stage of it. Our church was 40 members when it started. It was 2,000 when we were done. Plus, we added 4 campuses. So we understand the bivocational challenges. We understand being married, having kids in different sports, and pastoring. So all those are like all challenges that we understand. And
Yes.
and so all I've done is really serve the Latino church since I was a child. And today I get to work with denominations. I get to work with pastors networks around the cities and different states throughout the U.S. and Latin America as well. We traveled extensively in years past, but all that just to say that God assigned this time for us to lead the U.S. Latino ministry for Awana, and then make it a support system for everything that we're doing. I believe that every part of the body is important, and you can't just become your own island. You gotta become part of that body, know your assignment within the body, and then support it, right, and find ways to improve it. So that's kind of what we've been doing this last few months.
That's awesome, man. I love that. And it's cool to hear your background and how God has led you to serve in Awana. And I'm glad you're part of the team, man. I'm just thrilled. And, as a missionary, I hear what you do, and it's very similar to what we do in the sense that we come alongside churches, we encourage them, we equip them, and we do all this to help them run their discipleship ministries in the Awana the best that they can in their communities. And so I'd like to hear a little more, because there is similarities in our role in some sense. How does Awana US Latino help US missionaries in their role of helping churches?
Well, here's what we're doing is that we want to come up alongside a U.S. missionary and develop their Spanish network.
Mm,
So you have Hunter, you got a network of churches that you're working with, and some might be Latino, some might just be an English congregation, but within that English congregation, you might have a Spanish congregation that you're not reaching out to, whether it's language, whether it's other barriers of training that you're having. So the biggest challenge that I saw was, how can I be a support system to a hunter who's out there working with churches, and he's also about every child, right? Every student needs discipleship. So what we're doing is that we have developed a training in Spanish, and then there's some churches that need bilingual, so we have that available. We have all the PowerPoints in English, Spanish, and bilingual. We have the handouts, and the one thing that we're wanting to do is, one, develop your network of Latino churches so they still report to you, they still work with you, only that we're partnering with you because we're the same body of Awana and we're training them. So we're developing what we call master trainers. The master trainers are equipped just like you to train at every level of the Awana curriculum and discipleship program to their churches. So imagine this, if you can just dream with me. Imagine that you have 10 churches, and all those 10 churches at one point will now have master trainers for each of the curriculums. They will always be doing training within their churches. They don't have to wait on Hunter to show up. Because sometimes a U.S. missionary, I don't know if you know a little show called Little House on the Prairie, but the circuit judge came around like every 3 months because there's only one. But if we develop master trainers, that we can scale that up. And the need is really demanding that we scale up discipleship in our churches.
yes.
It can't be dependent on one person that's over a region, but that one person can manage those processes as we come alongside and say, we'll take your Spanish speaking churches and we'll train them so that they can continue to grow under your network. So the next time that you're scheduling trainings, you're working with pastors, you say, oh, by the way, oh, you have a Spanish ministry here? Oh, yeah, we do. Well, I have a team that can serve them now, right? And it's all your network. So all we're doing is growing in your region. So all those people can come together for training at any given point, and they will become your master trainers, and you can pull from different cities depending on where you're doing the training.
That's perfect. And, that excites me just hearing that, because I do have a few Latino Spanish speaking churches under me. And I'd love to have resources like that. So that vision, that dream of those master trainers coming alongside and training in that way. I mean, that's just the picture of the church, right? Where we're
That's
this
right.
body working together, helping each other grow up in Jesus. And so, yeah, that's awesome. It just makes me smile just to think about that.
So the other thing that we're doing to complement that is that we've worked with the chain supply team,
Mhm.
and we wanted to know what upcoming resources are coming up the pipeline that Awana is introducing, whether we are reintroducing or introducing new resources.
Yeah.
And the best way I felt that we could help you out in the field is, if you bring out a TNT in English, I can bring out the TNT in Spanish that is the same, right? So in other words, your English congregation isn't doing one TNT, and then your Spanish congregation is like, oh, by the way, we don't have that yet for you,
Mm.
right? We're actually, now we're synchronized to where whatever we are introducing in English, we're going to introduce it in Spanish.
You had mentioned earlier you're coming out because Awana came out with Resilient Disciples, the book, a few months ago, and I think you said that pretty soon that's going to be coming out in Spanish, right?
Yes, that's coming out in the next 2 weeks. We started translation back in late March, and now we have completed everything. The design, it went off to print. We're waiting for them to come in about 2 more weeks, maybe at the latest. We'll have Spanish resilient books.
Again, just resourcing the church in valuable ways like that, whether it's curriculum, whether it's books, whether it's training. Yeah, to have them coming out the same time in that same pipeline, that's awesome. That's beautiful. And so, with what you're saying is your ministry is very much an equipping, a training ministry. So, what types of different platforms will the training have with US Latino ministries? You know, as I think of local churches, during this time, I've been doing trainings virtually, I've been doing podcasts, been doing all kinds of different things. So, what are some different platforms you guys are going to have when it comes to training local churches?
One of the things that I thought about was back in October of last year. Well, let me back up. In July of last year, Matt and I took a trip to South Texas, and we sat with a pastors network, and it was really a fun trip, and it was funny because we came away with training dates with 8 pastors networks, right? So Matt's excited, I'm excited, but I have no idea what we're going to train on. All I know is that we sold training dates, right? But it was just a testament of the need of the Latino church for consistent discipleship, which, Hunter, as you know, consistency is really the strength and at the core of effective discipleship. It's all about consistency. Do we do it day in and day out, or we do it for 8 weeks and we won't do it for another 4 months? It's all about consistent growth, right? So when I look at all that, I'm going, oh man, this is awesome. What are we doing, right? As I begin to process, I begin to think about what 3 different platforms that we can use. Obviously, there's so much things that you can do. You can have an app, you can have but all those things cost a lot of money. It's a big investment, it's a big shift, but you got to work with what you have, right? And to understand that process, you have to go back to the word. Everything's about going back to the word. You remember the young boy who had the few fish and loaves, right? That fed over 20,000. All he had was what he had, and he gave it to Christ, and Christ says, don't worry, I'll multiply it. I felt that same way coming out of the July meetings with Matt in South Texas. I'm going, Lord, you're going to have to multiply this because I don't know how this is going to happen, right? So here's my loaves of bread and here are my fish. So you do your thing. So what came out of it is the need of where we're heading in the future. Obviously, in-person training is very effective, and we were very good at doing that. But I had to modify things in order to work for the Latino culture.
Right.
Two, how do we do virtual training? I wanted 100% virtual training, plus I also wanted what I call blended training. In other words, just like on a Zoom platform, that people can chime in and register and come into our training and have the option to either take the training in English or in Spanish, and both have live moderators that are teaching the one curriculum that you're working with. Or you can jump on our website and look at all our training videos, and you can get training that way. So those are the 3 things that we've done. We're prepared to do in-person training in different cities. We're prepared to do the Zoom training, which is the blended, and then we're prepared to do 100% digital now, where your teachers can always be refreshing themselves even after they take our training. They can go to our website and then do a lot of refreshing as they begin to grow in their skill. The other thing that we've done is that we've broken it down. In other words, instead of tying up 6-7 hours of training for people, now what we're doing is that we are specializing just on curriculum. So for example, if you're the Sparks teacher, we're training Tuesday night from 7 to 9. All we need is 2 hours to train all the Sparks teachers. Prior to that, what we do is that you register for the training, and we will send to your church a folder with all the handouts in English and in Spanish. that have to do with sparks. So when you sit down at your home, or you do it as a group in your church to take the training, everybody's got their folders, got their handouts. So you're following the PowerPoint, you're following the moderator. So we all we did is just try to make this as much as possible feel like we're still there in person with you.
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I wanted them to come away with. So, and obviously in the Latino church, there's some challenges that we had to overcome. I take extra steps because there's some challenges that I'm overcoming through all these things.
That's exciting, and that's what we're seeing. Trying to implement across the board is, Juana's always thrived at that in-person training. That's always kind of been our niche. But now, because of COVID, I think it's helped us sharpen our skills in virtual training and what you call blended training, like we did with our virtual Awana ministry conferences, where there's some pre-recorded, but also there's people there teaching live, answering questions in the moment. And so, yeah, and I love hearing that you're implementing all these platforms just to make sure there's no stone unturned. That no leader
That's
says,
right.
"Oh, I wish that was here," or "I wish we had this option." We're making those options
It's
available.
really, and it's really about, are we doing all we can do, right?
Right.
Going back to the young boy with the fish and the loaves of bread. Did I give everything I had? The answer would be yes. So at the end of the day, are we giving everything that we have? One of the things in raising our kids was we never expected them to be the best. We only expected their best. And I think Jesus expects that from us as well. You don't have to be the best, but will you give me your best, right? And that's the perspective that we live by.
And I love that perspective too, because I think we can bank so much of our ministry on what am I doing? Am I doing enough? But there's that spiritual element too, where yes, we give our best, but Jesus is the one who makes it better. He's the one
That's
that
right.
multiplies those efforts. So I think that's a good perspective to keep in mind in all of this. And I think that segues perfectly to the last thing I really wanted to ask you is, with these conversations I do with different missionaries or ministry leaders, I like getting very practical tips and ideas for those who watch or listen. And so I was wondering if you could share maybe just some steps, practical tips that can help leaders ensure that they're effectively implementing Awana's discipleship methods, their philosophy, their model. What are some practical tips you can give us as we head toward our end time here?
Number one is, the Bible says there's only one mediator between God and man,
Mm.
and that's Jesus Christ. So the principle is, you got to get to Jesus Christ, right? That's the principle. There's no other way. It's just Jesus.
Mm.
However, the method is, either you get there running, you get there walking, you get there skipping, you get there crawling. However, right? The method is just a way to get there. So that's really not even important. The
Yeah.
important thing is, you got to get there, right? So when I look at Awana and I look at ministry, what we're doing around the world and we're doing here in the US, I say to the leader right now, hey, don't get so caught up in the method, and don't get so locked into your method. It's about the principle. It's about the outcome. It's about child discipleship, student discipleship, impacting parents. And if your church is 10 blocks away, there's probably about 6, 7 different ways to get to your church. So the important thing is getting to your church. And this is what I'm going to encourage you today as you listen to me, and listen to our conversations, is that don't get caught up in your methods, because the method's just a way to get there. However, the principle is knowing Christ. The principle is like my friend Larry Acosta, who was a young Latino in LA that didn't have engaged parents, didn't have believers in the family, and he became the first believer because of an Awana parent, an Awana teacher, and an Awana friend. It turned his life around. That today he leads a national organization that has impacted thousands and thousands of youth workers, and all because somebody took the time. So when I look at Awana, I'm thinking, as long as you give your best, God's going to do great things with it. Don't get caught up in the method. And also, think about this. Everything's been laid before you. Just take the time to learn it now and then apply it with your students. But the best thing that you can do is you have to be a disciple. I have to be a disciple as well. I have, I'll show this to you. This is in Spanish. This is my 1 year Bible in Spanish. I've had it now for 21 years, and it's pretty worn out, as you can see. But it's my discipleship tool. It's what I do day in and day out. It's the little things that we'll do that make the difference. So during this pandemic, uh, our calendar should be full of FaceTime meetings. In other words, I'm gonna be start. I'm gonna call the Johnson family and say, hey, when are you guys in your home that I can call to your phone and do a FaceTime 2 minute call, 3 minute call with you, just to say hi to the kids and to you guys, and then just make a prayer for you. That's it. The Church of Jesus Christ will thrive during the pandemic, and we're seeing it thrive. However, the church will remember what we did for them during this pandemic. So we got to love them through the process. Other than all our stuff that we're doing, the best thing that we can do is really develop that strong relationship with them and be able to touch them in different ways. And we have to find those different ways. So one of those ways is through doing a FaceTime. I know everybody's tired of Zoom calls and videos and all this other stuff, but I think that one of the biggest pluses of what we're doing is to continue to touch people, right? You got to continue to shepherd. So those would be some tips that I would give you as you move forward with Awana discipleship in your churches.
Man, I love that idea of whether you're crawling, skipping, running, what matters is getting to Jesus. And I think that that can speak so many volumes to a leader because, every child is different. I think a trap we can get into is to assume every child is going to learn at the same rate, grow at the same rate. And, one child that thrives with working through handbooks and Awana, it's like they're sprinting. Another child may struggle. And so it's
Right.
learning to adapt and to develop our discipleship specifically to the child. And I've seen that language in Resilient. I've seen that language in a lot of ways from the leadership. So I love that. You know, we have to be patient with our kids. And
Right.
another thing you said too that I thought was impactful is, we need to be discipling ourselves. Not only do we need to disciple kids, but we need people discipling us because we make the disciples that are being made in us. And so, and like you said, itty bitty steps. I think we can get caught up in methods of, oh, we got to do a full blown Bible study. We got to do something for an hour. We got to, no, it's those little things, those small shifts that make big difference in your soul.
And you know what happens, Hunter, is the fact that there's nothing more powerful than when we model Christ.
Mm,
There's nothing more powerful than I can say 1,000 words, but you can see me do one action, and that one action is going to speak louder than my words.
yes.
So if we model Christ, if kids see that we walk the life of discipleship and we're going to journey along there with them, then that speaks volumes. That's the encouraging side. I have people telling me, hey, I think everybody should be digital already. Kids are into that. I'm saying, you know what? It's all about relationship, man. I'm still reading my 1 year Bible. I'm still reading this, and I have the U version, and when I have to read that, I read it. But there's preferences, like you say. People thrive in different things, and Awana has those resources available for us to thrive according to our preference. But at the end of the day, it's about getting to Jesus.
And I like that imagery of journey. I think that's a good way to close this out is sometimes I think we envision discipleship is a classroom or it's a specific setting. Discipleship's wherever you're at, and it's a journey. And it's us walking in one direction toward Jesus. Doesn't mean we won't hit bumps, doesn't mean we won't trip up or get caught up in detours sometimes, but as long as we're taking each other by the hand walking toward Christ, we're
That's
making
right.
disciples.
And you know what? We can be 20, we can be 40, we can be 70, or we can be 90. and still be effective in what we call the Great Commission. The only mandate to the church is to evangelize and make disciples.
Yeah.
So what are you waiting for? Get out there and continue doing that, because that's what God called us to do.
Perfect call to action, perfect encouragement as we close out. So Abel, thank you so much. This conversation was encouraging to me. I learned things as we talked, and it just made me excited about what we get to do through Awana and discipling kids and discipling leaders. So thank you again. We're going to have to come back on, and I'll pick your brain on more topics in the future. But man, thanks again for coming on.
Well, thank you, Hunter. It's been a great experience, and it's always a pleasure to jump on a call with a missionary, but a missionary that's passionate about loving kids, discipling children and youth, and reaching parents and just impacting their community. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I'll continue to lift you guys up in prayer as well as we move forward.
All right. Thanks, Abel.
God bless.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching this conversation. If you have any questions or comments about anything that was said, you can send those to hunterw@awana.org. And if you want to learn more about our work here in the Tennessee Network, you can head to our website at www.awanatn.com. And if you want to see more content like this coming, there's a few things you can do. One, you can subscribe to our YouTube or podcast channels, but you can also become a monthly financial partner. To do that, head over to www.awanatn.com/donate. Now, if you want to learn more about Abel and his ministry with Awana US Latino, go over to www.awanauslatino.org. There you'll find all kinds of information, videos, and resources. Well, again, I hope this conversation was helpful and encouraging to you. I'll see you next time. God bless.